Okay, I'm going to make a start. If you hear me clicking, it's because I'm letting people in who've joined the waiting room, but we'll make a start now. So as I mentioned, thank you very much for joining this editorial manager demo session. This is the second of 4 sessions looking at how groups will be using editorial manager. This session will look at managing editorial team roles and also adding your protocols and reviews from Archie as you transfer the editorial process into EM. This is the plan for our session today. So I'm just going to talk a bit about how you can prepare as a group for using editorial manager. Then we'll look at adding editorial team roles in EM. That's part of how you would get your group set up to use the system. And we'll look at initiating proposals for reviews in progress. So initiating proposals is EM speak for sending an invitation to authors. And that's the process that you have to go through as you invite authors of reviews and protocols in progress to submit their next draft to editorial manager. As I said, please unmute at any time or type in the chat. There's no such thing as a stupid question. There is a lot to take in as we're all getting used to a new system and all the new ways of working that go along with it. So do stop me or ask for clarification if anything's unclear. Or of course, you can email support at any time if you think of additional queries after. I think that we have got some support team colleagues on the call this morning. So if you do notice that there's a question in the chat that I've missed, please do interrupt me and we can look at that together because it's often the questions are useful to everyone. Right, so as you prepare to start to use EM as a group, and just to note at this point that every group should have received an invitation from support to pick a date to start using EM between now and the 31st of August. If you haven't yet let support know your preferred date to start using the system, please do so that we can make sure that you're allocated a support team member to help you as you start to use the system. I think we're still waiting to hear back from a few groups, so do get in touch. As part of the support package that we've put together, we've got a list of tasks that you can be getting on with at any time from now, really, as you get ready to start using Editorial Manager. So the tasks are all listed in the Editorial Manager collection on Cochrane Training. I'll quickly switch to that so that I can show you where those are. Right. There we go. So this is the Editorial Manager connection on the Cochrane Training site. Oops, sorry, here we go. This is the Editorial Manager collection on the Cochrane Training site. This is the page of preparatory tasks. And as you can see, there's a list of a few jobs that you can be getting on with as you wait to move your reviews over. And the ones that we'll be looking at in more detail today are tasks 3 and 4 on this list, choosing which reviews you will add to Editorial Manager and looking at the roles in Editorial Manager that people in your group will need. I would advise you, if you haven't had a look at this collection yet, do take a look at the prep tasks, the practice tasks, the knowledge base and so on. There's a lot of useful resources there. So as I said, you've got a few tasks to go through. Some of them are optional, such as saving review templates in Archie with a particular naming convention, which will ensure that the correct RevMan file is picked up when the RevMan file is opened when you register the title in Editorial Manager. The second task is to prepare for receiving new title proposals. So when you're using EM, authors who are interested in writing a review with your group should be submitting those proposals via Editorial Manager. So if you do have a review proposal form of your own on your group website, we're advising you to take it down and replace it with a link to your group's EM homepage. There's more information on that on the training website. Deciding your editorial team and group editor roles, choosing which reviews you will add to Editorial Manager, letting us know which staff members you would like to have access to Convey, which is the integrated declaration of interest management system, which works alongside EM to manage author declarations of interest, and letting us know if you copy edit in-house, so that you can we can put in place arrangements for your copy editors to have access to the linked production manager system where copy edit happens. I'm just noting a question from Jodie in the chat about, is there a step for authors before they jump in and fill out a review proposal form? Yes. So in Editorial Manager, what you have first is that authors submit an expression of interest. That's a very short form in Editorial Manager. It's an online form with only 3 questions, essentially asking people to confirm that this is genuinely a new review question, doesn't have an overlap with existing reviews, to explain why it's very important to do this review, so looking at how topical it is and so on, and then providing details of the title and the author team. That would come through to you as a new submission. If you're not interested, or if your group is not receiving, accepting new title proposals at the moment, you can reject it out of hand with no further review, just one click of a button. If it does look interesting, if you do think that that could be worth exploring, you then ask the authors to submit the fuller review proposal form, and you send that request to them through EM, and then they complete a much longer, much more detailed online form, which gives you the full information about the review, all the proposed methods, the PICO information, even how many studies they expect for eligibility and so on. So yeah, it's a 2-stage process as most people manage it now. And this will entirely replace, by the way, the open title proposal form on the Cochrane.org website currently, which comes through our support help desk. So when all the groups are using EM, all new title proposals will come through EM. Okay, so as I said, we're going to be looking in more detail at 2 of those preparatory tasks in this session. So deciding on your editorial team and group editor roles, and then choosing reviews that you will add to EM. So we've suggested in the preparatory tasks page that you might want to prepare a couple of spreadsheets covering this information. For the editorial team roles, that's just really for you to do a bit of triage, if you like, deciding in advance which roles you'll be allocating to people, just to make group setup a bit quicker. With the reviews, the spreadsheet list is both for you, but also to share with support, so that we can make sure the settings on those reviews are correct. And I'll talk about that in a bit more detail when we come to the section on transferring content into EM from Archie. But to start with, we're going to look at editorial team roles. So there are 4 role types that you can have in Editorial Manager. You can have an author role, a reviewer role, an editor role, and a publisher role. Now, the author and the reviewer roles are default roles for everyone. So everybody who's in Editorial Manager already has both of those roles. That effectively means that anyone could propose a title, and anyone could be invited to provide peer review comments. So those are default roles for everybody. But the editorial roles are allocated by you, because obviously those are much more specific. Within the editorial roles, you've got quite a similar range of roles to the ones that we recognise from Archie at the moment. So managing editor, assistant managing editor, information specialist, editorial assistant, coordinating editor, and so on. And you would allocate those to people in your group corresponding to their roles in Archie. The mapping of roles between Archie and EM is very similar, but it's not exactly the same. We do have a table in the knowledge base which goes through exactly how the roles map to each other, and you can refer to that for information as you're deciding which roles to allocate to people in your group. And the publisher role type, just briefly, we're not going to be talking about that anymore in this session, but it's allocated to managing editors and others who are involved in the publishing workflow. So those are the 4 role types, and you can decide, one of the steps that you can take when you adjust people's roles is you can decide what role you want them to have when they first log in. So when you log into EM, you can decide to land on your author menu, your reviewer menu, your editorial menu, your publisher menu. Now, for almost all editorial staff, in fact, I would say for all editorial staff, you want to be landing on your editorial main menu. That's going to be the most useful. So you can make sure that you always see your editorial role as your primary role when you log in. So we're asking people in the preparatory tasks to fill out a little spreadsheet, which would look a little bit like this. I've done it with test roles here, but just putting people's names, the default login role. So as I said, what page you want them to see when they first log in, whether they're an editorial board member, whether they have a peer reviewer role as well, and what exact editorial role that person would have. So just to look at the editorial board member column, first of all, it's not necessarily people who are on your editorial board. It's a way of flagging in Editorial Manager who is affiliated with your group. So one of the things that you'll see when we look at EM in a moment and we test out adding and adjusting roles for people is that we don't have within EM a similar concept of primary group as we do in Archie. So as we said in session 1, we've got the different sites for each network, the 8 sites for networks and then 1 site for the central editorial service. Within a network site, you could have then 10 or 12 or however many managing editors. The editorial board designation and also the people flags that you can add, again, we'll look at that in a moment, allows you to show which group people are affiliated with. And it also means that you can adjust your peer review search settings so that if you're wanting to search for somebody to provide comments on a review, you can set so that your editorial board members always appear at the top of the list of search results, for example, so that you can easily find people who are affiliated with your group. Okay, so you can go through your Archie role list and compile your spreadsheet showing your editorial team, your group editors, and saying how you want them to be labelled in EM. Then the process of adjusting roles for people goes through 3 steps, really. First of all, you have to search for the person, you add and edit their roles, and then you can add people flags to their record. So we're just going to be looking at that in a minute. Sorry, I'm just seeing a question from Elizabeth coming through. Will this limit our contact with potential peer reviewers in other EM sites and systems across Cochrane? No, that's a good question. So despite the fact that I said we've got these 9 sites for EM, we have what's called people sharing enabled across all the sites. So effectively, everyone who has a peer reviewer or editor role in Archie and all the authors are loaded onto every site. So the people database that sits behind is the same for every site. So if you were searching for a potential peer reviewer, you would not just see in the search results peer reviewers from your own network or your own group, you'd see them from across the whole of Cochrane. So individual network site, shared people database. Okay, thanks very much for that question. It's a useful one. So we're going to jump into the training server now and have a look at searching for a person, adding and editing roles, and adding a people flag. I'm going to use the examples of those 3 people that I had earlier. So let me just pull up training site. So I'm proxying as a managing editor here to show what you would see if you were doing this. So let's say you want to add a role for your assistant managing editor when you start using the system. all MEs should have, sorry, I should start by saying that all MEs should have the managing editor role already and be set up already. That was done as part of the EM site set up by Dave Allen from Origin Consultancy. So he's configured each of the network sites with all the MEs in the network already in there with their managing editor role. So you should have that when you log in. But then when it comes to allocating the right roles to the rest of the members of your team, this is what you would do. And you can do this at any time. Actually, you can do it right now. I mean, not right now, but after this call, all the sites are available. They are live. You are able to log in, and there is no timeline for allocating editorial team roles, so you can do it. It is also task 1 in the practice tasks if you want to practice on the training server first. So I'm going to search for the person that I want to add a role in my group to. So you can search from all these different filters, first name, last name, and so on, but I'm just going to search for email because that corresponds to my test accounts. Okay, so you can see here I've got my 3 test people popping up. So I'm just going to do my assistant managing editor first. So you just click on the link with the person's name to open their personal information. You can see here then the default login role is the first thing that you see on the list. So I'm going to change that. So first of all, I'm going to add an editorial role of assistant managing editor. It's going to ask me to confirm. Okay, and then default login menu, editorial menu, available as a reviewer. No, I've decided my assistant managing editor not going to be offering peer review. Board member, yes. Forbidden as reviewer, no. No publisher role, and then I can submit to save. Okay. So now I am going to add a people flag to show which group my assistant managing editor belongs to. So to do that, I'm going to click on this little flag icon next to the person's name, and you'll see the people flags all come up here. So just scanning down the list for the right group, eyes and vision. Here we are. And I'm going to submit. Okay, and then you will see that that flag, that letter is visible in the search results, and that will be the same for any flags that you add. And you can add multiple flags as well. So if somebody is has a role in several groups, you would see that the different letters would appear one after the other after their name. Okay, I'm just going to have a look at my group editor now. So that's somebody who provides editorial oversight in the group. And I'm going to say, yes, this person is available as a reviewer. They are a board member, but their reviewer role is methods reviewer. They've got an expertise in methodology. And then I'm going to give them the handling editor role. Now, handling editor means that this person can make decisions on reviews and can invite peer reviewers to comment. So I know that I want this group editor to have these powers in the system. So I'm going to give them the handling editor role. Okay, and then I will submit that. Okay. And then I'm just going to add again the people flag to show that this person belongs to my group. There we go. Okay, so as I said, you can start doing this whenever you need to, really. Yes, oh, sorry, thanks, Anna. That's a useful comment from Anna in the chat there. So the demo site, the training site that I'm in now, shows all CRGs, so you get a much longer list, but when you're in your own network site, you would only see the sites popping up for your relevant network. So that's useful to know. And you can start doing this anytime. The important thing to note is this doesn't trigger any notifications. So nobody's getting emails when you do this. You can do it whenever. And similarly, if you decide you're not happy with the roles that somebody's got, you need to upgrade or downgrade their permissions, you can just edit at any time, just click in, think actually, no, I don't want this person to be a handling editor anymore. They're basically just going to provide methods peer review. I'm just going to change it so that they don't have an editorial role anymore. And you can see that this person no longer has an editor role, but they are a methods reviewer, because all they would do is add comments rather than needing to make decisions. I'm just seeing a question from Rachel. What would be the best way to add the network assistant editors? That's a good question. So there is a role, network editor, and I'm just going to make a note, Rachel, to follow up and check if there is a network assistant editor role as well. But it may be that you're designed to have the network editor role. So I'm just scribbling that down. And I will follow up on that. But I know that the network senior editors have the network editor role, so it would just be about having a discussion about whether you get it as well, or whether we ask the tech teams to add an additional role to reflect that. So Ruth is asking, do editors see the roles that have been assigned to them? They may not want to peer review for groups other than their primary group. Yes, they would see the role. So you can see it if you look at your own user information. If you click on the link, update my information at the top here, you can see your own roles. But they're under no obligation to peer review for other groups. If they received an invitation, they could just decline it. But such as at the moment, really. But this adding the roles here doesn't create an obligation to work across the network. Okay, so you'll be going through this process. As I said, MEs should already have the requisite roles. If you're adding roles for group editors, assistant managing editors, editorial assistants, information specialists, and so on, just go through and save and add the people flags to make people easier to identify. So just a quick recap on editorial team roles. The roles can be added and adjusted at any time. And just to note that your editorial role should correspond to the highest level of permissions that you need in EM. So for instance, if you're an information specialist who also does some managing editor tasks, you would need the managing editor role in order to ensure that you can do everything that you need to do. You can only have one editorial role at a time in EM. So the role you get should correspond to the highest level of permissions for the tasks that you need to do. If you've got any queries at all about this as you start to allocate roles to people in your group, please get in touch with support. And just like I'll do with Rachel's query after this call, I'll get in touch with the technical support and we'll work out a configuration of the roles that's going to work for what you need to do in the system. Okay, so I'm just going to move on now to look at adding content from Archie. So just a very quick refresher from last week of the editorial process. So what we're talking about when we're adding content is the notify authors stage. So what we're doing is asking authors to submit their next draft to EM in preparation for processing the submission. So we're at the top left hand of this editorial process cycle up here. So initiating proposals for reviews, as I've said, proposals are invitations to authors. So you're going to initiate a proposal to either ask authors to start work or to submit their next draft to EM. And as you're preparing to start to use the system, you would want to be choosing protocols, reviews, and updates in progress to add to EM. So these would probably have an in-progress workflow in Archie. The next stage would be for the authors to submit a draft. You could, if you want to, choose a couple of things that are ready for peer review to move in if you would like to practice using the peer review aspect of the system. Otherwise, if you're happier to just add a collection of protocols, reviews, and updates and sit back and wait for submissions, that's absolutely fine. It's whatever works best for your group. So when you've gone through your review portfolio, pick out the list of protocols, reviews and updates that you want to move and send that list to support before your group starts using Editorial Manager, so a couple of days before. And what we will do is change the internal settings on your chosen reviews so that they can be managed in EM. We'll also change the settings on all your published reviews. That will mean that you can invite the authors at any time in the future, as and when those reviews become due for updating. No immediate action needed, we're just getting them ready for you. You can provide further lists to support at any time if a few weeks down the line you want to manage another batch of reviews in EM. It's just important to note that if you invite authors from EM without asking support to change the internal settings on the review, then the authors will not be able to submit to Editorial Manager. So do keep in touch with support with your batches of reviews and what you're moving over. And ideally, within a few months of starting to use Editorial Manager, you should have added all your reviews. So Elizabeth's asking, can authors submit a protocol or review without an invitation? No, they can't. So they need to have the settings changed on the review to submit to EM, and they need to have the link in the email that they would get from you to submit. Okay. So there are 4 stages that you go through when you're initiating a proposal, which we'll go through now. Firstly, checking the review settings in Archie, then moving to EM, adding the review stage, title and details of your group, and generating a PDF in the system. Stage 3 is to assign an editor, so the person who's going to be in charge of that review, fairly equivalent to workflow manager in Archie, if you like. And then finally, inviting authors, notifying them their next draft is due to EM. So we're just going to go to the training site now and have a look at that. So I'm going to go back to my main menu. I'm still proxying as an ME. I'm going to go to my proposal menu, and I would start by initiating a proposal here. So first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Training Archie. So Training Archie is linked to Training Editorial Manager and Training RevMan Web in the same way that Live Editorial Manager is linked to Live Archie, Live RevMan Web. So I'm going to be moving this review to Killer Zoom App. I should have chosen something with an easier title. I just wanted to make sure that it was an easy search term if needed, but I'm going to be moving this review into Editorial Manager, so adding it into EM to transfer the editorial process. So first of all, I'm just going to open the review properties and just double check, as I said, that the internal settings allow this review to be managed in EM. So you can see that here on the review properties where it says EMS, and yes, it's Editorial Manager. So I know that the authors are going to be able to submit to EM, so that's fine. I've done my check. I'm going to copy the title and I'm going to move back to EM. So article type here is a Cochrane review. Just going to proceed. Apologies for any delays in the training server, it is a bit slower than live. Just double check the article type is set. Add the title here. You don't need to fill in the target publication date and other details if you don't want to, but it is good to add the author submission due date because that date is pulled into the notification email. So it's calculated by the numbers of days that the authors have before the next draft is due. So I'm going to leave this at 30. That's the default value in EM. But obviously you would adjust that if you were expecting the next draft in 2 months, 3 months or whatever, you just change the number here. I'm just going to stop and have a quick look at the questions. Won't be a moment. Narelle's asking what happens if you don't assign an editor until the draft protocol is submitted. You need to assign an editor as part of the invitation process just to ensure that the submission comes through to your correct CRG. You can readjust it again after submission. Following Wouldn't a review submission? No, so it wouldn't actually arrive in EM. If the settings were changed centrally, but there was no matching invitation in EM, the authors would find themselves able to download the submission files from RevMan Web, but they couldn't do anything with it. So if they logged into Editorial Manager, they would have no invitation to submit on their record, so they couldn't proceed with the submission. So both parts of the settings need to be changed. So you need to have your invitation in place in EM to allow the authors to click and submit. So I'm going to proceed and build a PDF of this now. This is just a compulsory part of the process, just to make sure that it's all set up correctly. Just confirm the title's correct. So I go to select my group from here. That's again to ensure that the submission comes into the right group. And I'm going to build the PDF for my approval. Just takes a minute. You can see building PDF for editor. So I'll just take that moment while it's building the PDF to look at another question. So Tom was asking, once a review is in EM, will the authors still be able to check it out into RevMan Web via Archie? If you mean, can they authors still right click on the review title in Archie and select open in RevMan Web? Yes, they can. Yeah, it doesn't change anything to the ability to open in RevMan Web. But do let me know if that wasn't the question that you're asking. So my PDF's been built now. I'm going to view it. It's downloaded here, so I don't actually have to view it if I don't need to, but I'm going to show what it is. It's just basically a blank front page to represent the invitation. And I'm going to approve it. And then I'm going to go back to my Manage Proposals menu, and that will now show in my new proposals requiring assignment. So what about RevMan 5? No, you can still open in RevMan 5. Absolutely fine. Is the PDF the submitted to Archie for editorial approval version? I'm not quite sure what you mean by that, Claire, but the PDF that I just built then is literally just a placeholder PDF in EM, which just confirms the title details, and it's just part of the process of creating the invitation. It doesn't contain the text of the review. That's what you would receive from the authors at the next submission. But yeah, RevMan 5, this doesn't affect anything. Authors can still check out reviews. So I'm going to go to my new proposals requiring assignment. I'm going to assign this to myself because I'm the editor who wants to receive the submission. Again, apologies if the training server is chugging a bit today. Oh, there we go. Okay, so I'm just going to search for myself on the page. Again, you wouldn't have to do this when you're on your network site. You'd get a much shorter list of editors, but obviously, as we've said here, we're on the training site and we've got absolutely everybody. So it's a longer list. I've assigned that to myself. So the editor's assigned. We know which editor that submission is going to be coming to. I'm going to go back to my Manage Proposals menu. This is now in my new assignments proposals, just assign it to myself. So the final step is to invite the authors. So I'm going to search for the lead author. So just double checking, surname was Antonio. So I'll just search here. And obviously this is part of your practice tasks. You have a task to go through this process of initiating a proposal, but it's important to note that the training server that I'm using here does not send emails to authors. So all the authors' emails addresses have been corrupted in the system. They've been turned into dummy addresses. So you can go through this process as many times as you like. You're not going to email anyone. So this is my lead author here. I'm just going to choose to assign this invitation. and proceed. So then I'm on the screen where I can select and customize the message, the notification that's going to go to the authors, letting them know to submit the next draft to EM. So I need to make sure that I'm selecting the letter here, author assignment for transfer to EM. And then I'm just going to customize, might want to add in some extra text to this particular author team. So you'll see the body of the letter here contains a lot of merge fields. So everything that's got these percentage marks on either side, they're automatic merge fields pulled from the system, which will convert obviously to real text when the email is generated. If you want to check what it's going to look like, you can use the preview letter button here. I'm just going to pull that out. And you'll see this is the full letter. So it's got the review title populated, the author's name. It explains a little bit about the fact that Cochrane's moving its editorial processes to Editorial Manager, notifies them that they're the contact person and they will therefore need to submit. It's pulled in that due date that we set earlier for submission. Gives the author some instructions on how to submit when they're ready, points them to the instructions on how to submit drafts, and then obviously it's populated my title and group affiliation and so on. So you can just preview to Elizabeth saying to me, it's missing the title of the review in the text. Okay, I can see it up here, the top, paragraph 2. Okay. Oh, I see. Yes, entitled. Yeah. Okay. I'll double check that the correct merge field is in the letter template after this. Thank you very much for flagging that, Elizabeth. Please be reassured that the templates on their training site don't cross-populate with the live sites. So I will check that. Thank you for flagging. Just to note on that, actually, if you have any feedback on the letters, if you're going through the system and you think, oh, this is not quite what I want to say to authors at this point, there are feedback and suggestions forms on the Editorial Manager collection on Cochrane Training that you can use to suggest edits to these letters. So that's a good thing to do, and I'll check that out afterwards. So thanks for flagging that. Just going to flick back to go through some other questions here. So Nicole was asking, does EM send the letter like this to the whole author team? No, that's a good question. So this is going to the contact person here. But if you want to, you can CC other authors. So I would advise for that, just pulling up your email all authors email from Archie and just copying the other addresses across. Now, I'm not going to do that because if I put genuine email addresses here on the training server, it will actually send them. But when you're doing that, you can, if you wish, add the email addresses of the rest of the authors as well in BCC or CC so that they all get the information. That's noted in the knowledge base in the step-by-step instructions on how to do this. And Norel is saying, can any author submit? No, it is only the contact person. So this email makes it clear that this is going to the contact person who is known as the corresponding author in EM, and it says to them, it is your responsibility to submit the draft. If you don't want to be doing that, please notify us as soon as possible, and then you can change the corresponding author in EM to the person who is actually going to be doing the submission work. Ruth had a question about CRG's review numbers. They are associated with reviews. However, they are slightly hidden in the additional manuscript details in EM. So if you want to see it up front, what we're advising in the preparatory tasks is that you could consider adding the review number onto the title when you add the title into the system. So it could be review number 123, title ABC. And you can add that and it will then show in your list. So there's more information on that in the preparatory tasks. Contact authors on the property sheet can be different to the contact person on the workflows. Yes, you can directly edit the invitation letter, Jodie. So you can type here, just type in the and that will save when you press save. So you can overwrite anything you want. You can remove text, including merge fields if you prefer, just as long as you remember to save before you send. I'm going to come back to Narelle's question in a minute. Do you have to remove the concatenated number before publishing? No, because it's not in the RevMan file, which is what's actually going to be published. Yeah, so a few questions on that. So the corresponding author who has responsibility for submitting to EM doesn't have to be the same as the lead author. You can reassign the corresponding author to the person who is most likely to do the job of submitting. If you have any questions about that for particular author teams, do get in touch with support and we can provide further advice. I'm just going to save this now because I know that we're getting close to 45 minutes. So I'm just going to confirm here that I've got the correct letter. Got a little star there, which shows that I did customize it. I'm going to re-add the full title of the review. And I'm going to lock that title for the authors so they can't change it. Just double check the submission due date is correct and then submit. And that's going to send the email off to the authors in the live site, obviously. And then I can go back to my main menu and then start again with initiating another proposal. So you'll be doing that process over and over again as you start to add content to EM, but it does get quicker. And I would say you're probably looking at maybe 10 to 15 minutes per title as you start, but speeding up as you move through. And you can also divide up the task between several members of the editorial team and all be logged on and doing it at the same time. No, I think the dates in US, I think they convert to UK format in the letter when it's previewed. And Claire's asking, why can't this stage be done centrally? Because we can't choose which reviews you want to move and when. So as I was mentioning last time, we're asking people to sort of do a bit of triage in their review portfolio and select some reviews to move. And we can't do that because we're not sure what reviews you would like to manage in EM. That said, on my final slide, I was going to note that if you need extra help with adding titles to EM, if you've got an enormous portfolio, if you've got a lot of things to move, please do let us know and we'll see what we can do. So yeah, in order to be able to initiate proposal in EM, we need to have the review set to EM in Archie. Yes, that's correct. So that was why when I was going through those 4 steps for initiating a proposal, step 1 was to just double check the Archie settings. And obviously, if you see that it's still set to be managed in Archie, send a quick message to support. I'm moving this review to EM. We can change the settings for you. Okay, so very quickly, just to recap at the end, do go through your review portfolio and pick the protocols, reviews and updates in progress that you want to add to EM when you start. Send support the list of your selected reviews, then provide further lists of batches when you're ready. Set yourself a deadline for moving active content. So look to have moved most of the titles when your authors are working after a few months of using EM. And as I just said, do let us know if you need any extra help. Do all reviews, whatever stage they are at, need to be moved from Archie before Archie workflows? Okay. So about the date formatting of numbers versus months, I will follow up on that as well with the tech teams to see if that can be changed as a merge field. Okay, so no, Claire, I explained in session 1 that basically Editorial Manager is just managing reviews in progress, so active reviews. So what you would do when you sit down with your review portfolio is have a look at your protocols, your reviews, your updates in development. If any of them are likely to publish in the next few months, and certainly before the end of 2021, you can simply put those on one side. You can say, okay, these are going to publish from Archie. I'm going to leave them as they are. I'm not going to transfer the editorial process to EM. Look at the rest of the reviews, and then you might pick a proportion to add when you first start and then another batch to add later on. Your published reviews, you don't need to add at this stage at all because you will add them over time as they come due for updating. Some reviews, withdrawn, inactive or stable, no longer being updated, they may never move into EM at all. They may only ever be on your resources list in Archie because effectively there is no active editorial process for those reviews. So I hope that's clear, but if you've got any questions on it, because I know that it does concern a lot of groups with big portfolios, if you've got any questions about your specific group, please contact support. Okay, I know we've gone a little bit over time, so I'm going to stop there, but if anyone's got any final questions, please do ask. Otherwise, please get in touch with support or on community Slack on our EM support channel. Oh, sorry, Mariana. How many reviews the average person be moving? What is an extra large number? That's a good question. I would say over 50. But please get in touch with us if you've got a query about a specific group, because it's hard to make generalizations. Okay, thank you so much. And I will see you all next week when we will be looking at how to handle new submissions. So the next stage when the authors do submit. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thanks, Ursula.